Hi everyone. Now I'd like you to meet a very good friend of mine. His name is Michael Cox. He's a New Zealand Anglican priest, and he's going to be talking to us about his interest in the afterlife communications, the communication with the spirits, and his church's interest in these communications too, the Anglican Church. Well, he's studied theology, he read theology at Oxford and St. Catherine's, and also he studied at Ripon Hall, a modernist college, a theological college. First, we'd like to clarify that we are not here and have no intention to pass any judgment as to the content of the communications Reverend Michael Cox received. And what we want to highlight here is that he's a Christian Anglican priest, and he is a very serious and very seriously committed to the realities of the communications that came through the medium he had contact with. And he now is a very strong investigator of the afterlife, linked to the ideas of the essence of Jesus Christ's teachings. Because for me, this is the most important goal of the afterlife communications, right? The ethical approach, to change us inside so that the world can be changed. Well, you may be wondering, why Christianity? Have you forgotten all the serious and tragic mistakes Christianity has made in the last thousands of years? No, I haven't. But what we can see now is that these mistakes are very common mistakes that humans make whenever they work in a group, at a union, in a church, business. These are human mistakes. These mistakes have been born from sick pride and selfishness. And so it's easy to see that these mistakes have nothing to do with the essence of Jesus' teachings. Despite our spiritual origin, we are all still very material beings. We bear great difficulty accepting the focus on the essence of Jesus' doctrine. And because this focus is not matter, is the spirit, and not on dogmas or external religion, without any disregard to the due importance of matter and religions. Well, we think that this is why the voice of the spirits came to clarify Jesus' teachings to us. Who better than the spirits to speak about Jesus' focus on love, which is the message that has to come from the Spirit. I hope you enjoy it. Well, first, we'd like to thank you very much for accepting our invitation so kindly. It's a great pleasure, Michael, to have you here with us. And I know you prefer to be called Michael. The first question is, how did you get interested in the paranormal, spirit communication, and its relation to Christianity?
It's a pleasure and privilege to be talking with you, Luis. A new friend with whom I'm finding myself much in common with. When I was 2 years old, the pine plantation around our house in Mount Somers, New Zealand, caught fire. and the house was threatened. Men came up from the village to help, and tragically, one of them had a heart attack and died. I believe they placed his body on the dining room table in our house. And at just about that moment, the telephone rang from Christchurch, 200 kilometers away, a very expensive toll call in 1931. And it was my grandmother. My grandmother had felt there was something wrong with us, and she rang up and said, "What's the trouble? What's happening?" So we were very impressed with that when we thought about it. And that may have influenced me to be interested in telepathy and the psychic, or maybe I had it just built into me. My father was interested in the Christian mystics. He was interested in the direct experience of God. And maybe that rubbed off on me. He put a picture of the infant Samuel over my bed, where the infant Samuel is kneeling and saying, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth."
What were the conflicts you had to face since you were an Anglican priest?
The Anglican Church is not like the Catholic Church, which has one official teaching. The Anglican Church was established as a state church designed to embrace people of different theologies, but where they could worship together in harmony. It's a good objective. So there are different kinds of Anglicans who may disagree with each other, but worship together and usually tolerate dissent. So if any Anglicans thought I was singular or eccentric, I wouldn't be laughed at or rejected.
Well, Michael, this is amazingly similar to what Spiritism teaches in terms of worshipping. And speaking of Spiritism, Allan Kardec, in his book What is Spiritism, says, Spiritism rests on principles independent of any dogmatic issues. Its moral consequences are those found in Christianity. And to cut a long story short, he says, it's for this reason that of all the religion sects in the world, Christians are the most capable of understanding Spiritism in its true essence. Don't you agree, Michael, that Christians could add important information to their faith if they access the afterlife truths under the essence of Jesus' teachings, but with no dogmatic fear?
I couldn't agree more. I have, by the way, studied Kardec and found little reason to disagree with his writings.
Michael, reading one of your pages on the web, I came across something very interesting, and I'd like you to give us some more explanation on that. You said, we quote, I have been much focused for most of my life on research into the paranormal in the belief that Christianity would be more soundly based, if based more on universal spiritual experience than in adherence to a church structure alone. Could you say something more about that, please?
My passion for this research has been much intensified by almost 200 conversations with what I believe to be the spirit of Stephen the Martyr. His interpretations of the teachings of Jesus were indeed based on universal spiritual experience. Stephen's humble, calm, sometimes humorous talk explored all the main Christian teachings, interpreting them in the light of universal experience. I found myself questioning Stephen after a remarkable series of coincidences which I relate in my book, Into the Wider Dream, or synchronicity in the witness box. Stephen's teaching I record in my book, Afterlife Teaching from Stephen the Martyr. Stephen briefly spoke in his own dialect of ancient Greek, the dialect spoken by Greek speakers in Thrace. And many scholars have studied it and said that it would be very hard even for an advanced scholar to construct the words that Stephen spoke. It's certainly beyond my power to invent, and least of all of the medium who actually spoke the words, because he didn't complete high school. In other words, they consider the words to be genuine and proof of his reality.
Yes, well, really awesome to hear about this experience you had with this medium and the spirit, of course. Do you have in mind, Michael, one of the difficulties Christian churches still have when it comes to accessing the new spiritual realities?
There's a great variety of belief in the many sects of Christian churches, just as there's a variety of belief in the Anglican Church. More conservative Christians tend to base their faith on stories in the Bible rather than on experience and science. And they tend to refer to their favorite passages as a foundation. And there are also, these days, many Christians who are strongly influenced by the philosophy of materialism and have little faith in the world of spirit. But thank goodness there are also people who have open hearts and minds.
What do you think of the Church putting to one side the important investigations on the communication with the spirits and the afterlife issues?
You could say that it was suicidal. If what a church teaches is not based on experience, it will die.
What's your opinion, Michael, about those people who supposedly, based on the Bible, state that all communications come from evil spirits?
The Bible is a library of books with differing understandings of God. The selection of books differs as to whether you're a Protestant or a Catholic, or Greek Orthodox or Russian Orthodox. But one could say that much of the Old Testament is stressing obedience to rules, whereas Jesus and Paul in the New Testament base everything on love of neighbor and love of God. In the Old Testament, you find King Saul getting into awful trouble for consulting a medium. In the New Testament, in the first letter of John, we find him saying, test the spirits, and those that acknowledge Christ, listen to them, which is the same thing as what the Anglican committee, our doctrinal committee was saying. Because some spirits are more advanced than others. Anyhow, those who are against talking with spirits seem to quote the Old Testament. Those who are for seem to quote the New.
Well, incredible how similar your conclusions are to mine in this field. And, okay, but this is your personal work, private work with the mediumship and the spirit. But does the Anglican Episcopal Church have anything to say about messages from the spirit communication, mediumship?
In 1937 was published the Archbishop's Report on the Doctrine in the Church of England. It was aimed at presenting a consensus about what Anglicans believed. There was a committee devoted to investigating spiritualism, what one can learn from the departed through seances. They met for several years, and in the end, they reported. A majority agreed that talking to spirits could be very valuable, depending on the spirit, of course, as St. John said. A minority were against it. So because it's a disagreement, the Archbishop put it in the top drawer. He shelved it. Fortunately, one of the spiritualist churches of England heard about this report, got a copy of it, and publicized it. And actually, I'd be very pleased they did so, because it does give the sign that there are many Anglicans who support and are favorable to talking with the departed. On a personal level, our conversations with Stephen the Martyr, two bishops have spoken highly of the teaching. So it would be untrue to say that Episcopalians or Anglicans as a church are against it, but rather because of the controversy about it, to keep harmony within the church, we don't talk about it. And I understand there are reasons for doing that, but if we don't talk about it, then people don't hear about it. They don't learn from it. So this study of the spiritualists and the modern day investigators of the paranormal, they really need very much to have their voices heard.
Well, actually, Michael, I was really surprised to get to know about the existence of this document. And I don't know, I think many people here in my country in Brazil have never heard about this. And I think this is very important, this connection, because we get to know how the efforts that have been made by many people all over the world to get to the spiritual truths, what we call here spiritist truths. Well, as you know, although Spiritism does not come as a new religion, it endorses the essence of Christianity, or Christian teachings, by adding the afterlife truths as important tools for us to understand Jesus better. And although the research of the paranormal today is far more advanced than in those days when the report was written, in my opinion, the majority report, as well as Kardec's work, are very accurate in terms of clarifying the pathways for those interested in these truths. We had a very famous medium here in Brazil called Chico Xavier, very respected here, and he had a spirit guide called Emmanuel, who had lived in Brazil, according to the medium, Chico, as a then well-known Jesuit priest called Manuel da Nóbrega. I'd like you to comment on two passages Chico psychographed in 1938. In a free translation, he said, we quote, "For the time being, our whole work aims at the formation of a Christian mentality per excellence, a purified mentality free from precepts or prejudices that can stop humanity's march. And in another book, Emmanuel says, we quote again, "We are in need of organizing a spiritist conscience based on the simple philosophy of the gospel, which can lead the collective sentiments under a direction which is within the sacred objectives of peace and fraternity."
I do rejoice that Pope Francis is following Jesus in saying that everything important is summarized in the words, "You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first and great commandment. The second is like, namely this, you must love your neighbor as yourself." Words that, in fact, we used to recite at every Mass or communion service. Such a philosophy can unite all humanity.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your activities there in New Zealand? And also say something about your new projects in the Afterlife matters related to Christianity in your church. Are you taking part in any circle? Something like that.
My main activity over the last 10 years has been editing my journal, The Ground of Faith, which seeks to inform church people about research in matters of the spirit and the afterlife. At present, I'm trying to gather together a group of clergy of 8 so far who have begun to meet together to study the evidence for the afterlife and the nature of consciousness, and to do this from the point of view of believable human experience and from the scientific point of view. I'm delighted to be talking to a person like you with whom I so much agree. Amongst the general public, there is a gathering interest in communication with the other world, and I do so hope that the churches will eventually become more open. Thank you so very much, Luis.
Thank you, Michael. I thank you very much for your friendship, for the talks we've been having, and I'm really too delighted to see everything you do, bravely do, in the world that still has so much fear and so much sometimes prejudice. Thank you.